Hello, BookTube. I took advantage this morning of the slightly cooler temperatures to go out and do errands, much delayed errands. And they took me to downtown Boston in the area of the Brattle Bookshop, which is a used bookstore in the heart of downtown Boston that I love dearly. I've mentioned it many times on this channel. They're fantastic. They're 3 stories jam-packed with books. The top story is antique and collectible stuff, first editions, signed editions, that sort of stuff. The first 2 floors are just double stacked hardcovers and paperbacks of all kinds of books, except romance, all reasonably priced and always changing, because the Brattle's always out buying. And next door, there's a sale lot that is enormous. There's thousands more books for $1, $3, and $5 that aren't arranged in any way except by price. So you have to prowl through every cart, every book, looking for something that is certainly going to be cheap. You can shop until you've got a big armload of books outside without breaking the bank. And I got to the area of the Brattle this morning right in time for the dog walking hour, which was really nice. I got lots and lots of smooching with my babies, which was really nice. And then I went to the Brattle and I got a ton of books that I then had to lug back here on my own with no muscular teenagers to help me. And I wanted to show them to you. We'll start with the only mass market paperback. Once upon a time, when I would go to the Brattle, I would only get mass market paperbacks. Now, today, I only got one. It's this. It's The Last Days of Krypton by Kevin Anderson, which I got in hardcover. The hardcover doesn't look anything like this. I got it when it came out in hardcover when I was working in a bookstore in the early mid-2000s, 2005 or 6, something like that. And I read it. It's the story of Jor-El and Lara, Kal-El, baby Kal-El's parents on the doomed planet Krypton. I got that hardcover and I read it and I liked it. I didn't love it. I wasn't head over heels over it, but I thought it was good and solid and nothing more. So I got rid of the hardcover. And then we got the paperback at the bookstore and it has a hologram. And I am a child. So I grabbed it right away and reread it. This came out about a year after the hardcover. I reread it, liked it a little more, and then for some unaccountable reason, I got rid of my paperback. No idea why that is, no idea when that happened, but I got rid of it. So I saw it today. I grabbed it, not only for the cool hologram, but also because I could stand to reread it. I could stand to see if I like it even more or maybe a third time. Then this next one, an anthology. It's despite its title, it's not new anymore. It's not contemporary. It's like 30 years old. It's the contemporary book of Irish poetry from Penguin. That has a metalwork on the cover there that just sort of looks like a red bull. Those of you who know your Irish cultural history and mythology will know that that is completely appropriate. And this will have a lot of poets in it that I don't know, I'm sure. It'll have a lot of poets in it that I do know. But this sort of thing, I will eat up the introduction, and then I will browse through it. I'm always happy to add another poetry anthology to the collection. I can't have enough of them. Then this next one is really a Steve book. It's the type of thing where I'm looking at the books one by one out in the sale lot, and I spot something that is just tailor-made for me. I know this is a biography. And I know every single detail that there is to be known about the subject of this biography and every single detail there is to be known about the biographer, and they are both long gone. This was published in 1863, in the middle of the American Civil War. No one remembers either one of these people anymore. So I have a whole lot of doomed knowledge about them. This is The Life of Prescott by Ticknor. George Ticknor's biography of William Hickling Prescott, the great historian. Prescott was an authority on all things Spanish culture, Spanish literature, Spanish history, and so was Ticknor. They shared that, and they shared a lot of other things too. They knew a lot of the same people. They were both trustees of the Boston Athenaeum. They were both forces behind what became the Boston Public Library, although Ticknor was that to an extraordinary degree. He gave the library tons of money. He revamped a lot of its early procedures that are still in effect today. He even went on buying expeditions to scoop up books for the library. And this is his biography of William Hickling Prescott. It has a price up there of $15 from 2003, and that price looks like it was a Brattle price. That's what they tend to do. They tend to half-circle their prices like that. This was out in the sale lot, So I'm assuming that maybe this was in the Brattle. Somebody maybe got it in 2003, took it home, read it, maybe died. It got back to the Brattle and made its way out to the sale lot. This is in a little bit of rickety condition. Not most of the book, but right at the beginning, the front board is coming loose from the book. I don't plan on getting rid of this. Of course, there's no one else in the world who would want it but me. I've never read this. I've read a lot of Ticknor's occasional pieces and whatnot, but I've never read this book. And I very much want to. So I will reinforce it a bit, not on the outside, but on the inside to try and keep it steady enough for me to read. Just counting on the fact that it will go, I have a whole shelf, a long shelf of older books about Boston luminaries, one kind or another, that are now totally forgotten. And I'm snarfing up these books because they're never going to be reprinted and no one's going to write about their subjects anymore. It's never going to be another Prescott biography. There'll never be a George Ticknor biography. In the 21st century? No way. So I grabbed them. I used to work in the Bates Hall at the Boston Public Library, right in easy line of sight of a wonderful bust, a very affectionate marble bust of Ticknor. But I grabbed these things because this life of Prescott will not be what you think of, will not be what you think of in the 21st century as a biography. It will be a life and letters. Even though it doesn't say that, it will be. It'll be full of Prescott's letters. And that's fascinating its own, just to get tons and tons of that. Then this next one is Shakespeare. It's one of my favorite Shakespeare. I have 3 Shakespeare plays that really stand out for me more than any other. And in all 3 of those cases, there isn't any actual reason for me to read the play itself anymore. In all 3 cases, I pretty much have every part by heart. It's the textual analysis that I like to read. And this is Henry VIII. And it's the Arden Shakespeare series, which means you're going to get a ton of great footnotes, great introductions, great appendices. This is the Arden King Henry VIII. Let me show you what I mean here. See that? Just tons and tons of annotations on every page of Shakespeare's play about Henry VIII, who you'd think would be on the cover. Instead of Hyacinth Bouquet? Is that who that is on the cover? I don't really know. We associate Henry VIII of England with 3 things: his wives, his girth, and his beard. After the age of 14, he didn't look like this, ever. The only person anywhere in Tudor history in his era that did was Cromwell, who would not dare to have put on a hat like that. He would not dare to, I have no idea what this is on the cover, in other words. But it's not the cover I got it for. It's the textual analysis. So I will not read the play. I will try not to. There really is no reason for me to do that. Instead, I will read the introduction, the notes, any essays in the back, that sort of thing. I don't know that I would get all of the Arden Shakespeare, but for instance, the Arden Shakespeare Hamlet is unbelievable. It's the Hamlet to have. Just plain and simple, just the Hamlet to have. Then this next one is the work of contemporary literary fiction that I read when it first came out, in the mid-2000s, I think around 2005 or something like that. And I read it again. I found the paperback again years later and read it and liked it even more. And now I found it a third time. So I think this is very waterloggy. It's very warped. But this is Ivor Struton, The Night Climbers, about a young man who goes up to university in England and falls in with a very jet-set crowd, the very smart kids, the cool, hep kids. He falls in love with the boy who runs that crowd and also with his sister. And as the title implies, one of the things that they do as a sort of signature dare amongst their members is to climb the ornate edifices of the buildings of the college, to hang on gargoyles and whatnot, even though that's very dangerous. Gargoyles usually can't support that kind of weight. And if they crack off, you'll fall to your death. And the stakes escalate in the course of this novel to worse things. And I'm wondering if I will like it the third time even more. The blurb on the front says a name to watch, but I don't think I've ever read anything by this author other than this book. I'm not even sure that this author writes anything else, but I'm going to give The Night Climbers another try. Then this next one, I could not resist. This is a great little blast, a tight little blast of scholarship. This is Thomas Burden, and this is his book on Dante. In one of these plastic library dust jackets, which means that this will never look any worse than it does now. It's in perfect condition. And this is his biography / study of Dante, who he studied for his whole life. He studied Italian literature for his whole life. Did a translation of the Divine Comedy that is very interesting. It's very interesting. You would think that a lifelong, passionate Dante scholar might make a Dante translation that was, the brutal word would be better than Burton actually did, but his is still very interesting, and he did tons and tons of books about Dante, scholarly books about Dante that are all wonderful. So when I found this, the one that I would want most of all, I grabbed it. Then this next one is an Everyman's Classic. I've shown you a few of those. I don't know if I have any within reach. No, I don't. I'm mostly because I have them all on one shelf of their own. But they have these uniform design things that are just lovely. I don't quite know what it is about this setup that appeals to me. But this is The Garden of the Finzi Continis by Giorgio Bassani, translated by William Weaver, who was a translation from the Italian in my last Brattle book haul. I think it was History, right? Amarante. This is a shard chipped off a much bigger work that is somewhat maladroitly called a novel of Ferrara, and that got a full dress translation just a few years ago. The whole of it, not just The Garden of the Finzi Continis, but the whole of it, in an edition that I thought was really ugly. I think we saw it on this channel. I think we saw the review copy and then the finished copy, and I laughed the whole time, thinking this is the cover design that you signed off on, and I didn't keep it. I didn't keep the review copy. I didn't keep the finished copy. I'm just waiting for someone to take that full translation and make it pretty. Bring out in Everyman's Library or Penguin Classic, which would be great, or something like that. But this is just wonderful 20th century Italian literature. So I didn't even know that Everyman Library made it. So I grabbed it right away to add to that list. Then this next one, I think is a first edition. It's seen better days, but I grabbed it because I'm a huge fan of all things House of Windsor. I have a whole bookcase of biographies of various members of the House of Windsor. And this is The Little Princesses by Marion Crawford. Marion Crawford was the governess to Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret when they were little girls, when they were girls in early teens. And was intimate with the whole of the royal family, knew everybody, and obviously was trusted by them. And then after that period of servitude was over, she wrote this book. And the royal family viewed it as an unbelievable betrayal of their inner confidences and dropped her, cut her. They never dealt with her ever again. And a few years ago, this was made the story of Marion Crawford was made into a novel called, in America, The Royal Governess, and I think in the UK it was just called The Governess, by Wendy Holden. And The Governess is really good. It's a really, really good historical novel told from the perspective of Marion Crawford about what it's like to suddenly meet the royal family and whatnot. And Wendy and I had a talk about it, and I think I wrote a review of it. I certainly waved it in front of you enough. I strongly, strongly recommend The Governess. And then she wrote a book about Wallis Simpson called The Duchess, in which she takes all of the knowledgeable, nuanced sympathy that she extends to Marion Crawford, a figure who actually does deserve it, and extends that same nuanced sympathy to Wallis Simpson herself, a figure who most certainly does not deserve it. So the whole time I was reading The Duchess, I was arguing with the author in my head, even though The Duchess is, damn it, a very good book. It's a very good book. You could do a lot worse for your September reading than to order in both The Governess and The Duchess. You will really enjoy both of them. And I've kept meaning, I'm still meaning, someday, to have a gigantic, epic 40-minute knockdown, drag-out fight with Wendy on this channel about the merits or lack thereof of Wallis Warfield Simpson. But I would also love to nudge her towards another book about the Windsors. What I would love more than anything else is a big 600-page book, a novel, of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, in a very intentionally humorous way, in a very Woodhouseian way, So make the telling, make the voice of the novel part of the fun. The Queen Mother lived through the entire length of one of the most momentous centuries in human history, and a lot of that was dark. But nevertheless, leave dark novels about the Queen Mother for someone else to write. What I wouldn't give for her to do a big, rollicking novel about the Queen Mother as another House of Windsor novel. But whether she does or not, I'll still have to manage to have a conversation with her on this channel. That would be great. But when I was bringing this thing back, when I was reading The Governess, I kept remembering on almost every page how long it's been since I read The Little Princesses. I never expected to find this paperback edition. But when I was bringing this back here, I was remembering all those times when I was reading The Royal Governess when I was kind of wishing I had this at my fingertips. But I was also feeling a little melancholy when I was looking at this, looking it over, thinking about planning when I'm going to reread it. Because Queen Elizabeth II is in the news again. When I left Hyde Cottage this morning, just a little bit ago, bulletins were coming out of Buckingham Palace saying that the Queen's doctors are very concerned about her health. Which, you know, she's in her late 90s, so that's sort of par for the course. But there was an extra element, there was an extra note sounded, and I've been watching the royal family for a long time. I've read everything about them, and you get to know the nuances of how the palace phrases things. And the extra note was not just that the Queen's doctors are a little concerned about her health, and so they're canceling all of her appointments for that day, all of her appearances and for the week and whatnot, but also that they are urgently requesting that all members of the royal family converge on Balmoral where she is. That is dire. That is very, very dire. The first part of that message from the palace is relatively pro forma. They're watching for her health all the time. With COVID, they're watching for her health all the time. The second part is dire. It's never said. And the reason it's never said is simple. It's the Queen herself, who, if she's able, will certainly not allow her children, her grandchildren, and her great-grandchildren to be bothered. She's a tough old lady. She doesn't want people to be bothered on her account. The only reason that such an announcement would go out, that the royal family is converging on Balmoral, is if she is no longer able to say, don't bother them. This is nothing. And that's dire. I will read this book. I'm going to put it on the list, I think, for this weekend. But I think there's a strong chance. I don't want to be doom and gloomy here. I don't want to jinx anything. But I think there's a strong chance that by the time I post this video today, Queen Elizabeth II will be dead. I think there's a strong chance that she was either non-responsive or already dead when her relatives were summoned to Balmoral. But notices like that just don't happen. They would have to happen over her objection, and nothing happens over the Queen's objection, so she can't have objected. She can't have been able to object. I don't like to think about that. That would be amazing in all of the negative ways. I don't like to think about what that would be, but I think there's a chance that that will be true. If not when I post this video, then tomorrow. I just have to prepare myself for that. That's all. And for King Charles III, which will result immediately, we shall see. But I have this anyway. I've wanted to add this to the Windsor section of my... I have a whole Windsor bookcase. I've wanted to add that to the collection and reread it for quite some time. So let's hope I'm wrong. Let's hope it's just maybe COVID. Maybe she got some sort of bug from Liz Truss when they shook hands. I don't know. I don't like that other note. You never hear that other note come from the palace because it would have to come over the Queen's objections. And nothing happens over the Queen's objections. She would never say, hey, you'd all better come here, this looks really bad. She would say, I'll muddle through, don't worry yourself. So the only reason that everyone in the royal family would have been told to converge on her bedside is if she couldn't say that anymore. But anyway, let's get off the gloomy topics. I'm hoping I'm wrong. Then this next one is another first edition. I wasn't hunting around for first editions, I promise. This is Citizen Tom Paine by Howard Fast, the author of Spartacus. This is his novel, a very early novel about Thomas Paine, the author of Common Sense. The sort of wordsmith who kicked off a large part of the American Revolution with his pamphlets, by giving everybody a common rhetorical line that they could hew to together, which is a far more concrete thing than the work that Samuel Adams did for 10 years to kick off the American Revolution, which was tavern by tavern, conversation by conversation. This was something you could actually hand to somebody. You could hand them Tom Paine's little book. And this novel is terrific. Howard Fast is not remembered anymore. The closest that he comes to being remembered is that he was the author of Spartacus. And Spartacus, the name, has entered into pop culture. A lot of people say, I am Spartacus. They don't even realize it's from a movie, and they don't realize the movie's from a book. But he's very good. Howard Fast is very good. I'm hoping that if I found this at the Brattle, I will find other things. April Morning would be very nice to find. Then this next one is Ancient Roman History. The other day, I went to the Brattle and I found a mint condition copy of a paperback of The Last Generation of the Roman Republic by Grun. And I mentioned at the time in that hall that it's a spectacular work of history. It is one of a small shelf worth of modern histories of Rome that you just have to have if you're a serious student of the subject. They're not really, none of the ones that I'm thinking of are really written for people who've never read anything about ancient Rome. They're not really, Adrian Goldsworthy readers. They're a little bit more than that. You have to know a little bit more because the authors have a lot of ground to cover. They aren't always going to stop to explain things to you. Ronald Sim would be on that shelf. And so would this book. When I got that Last Generation of the Roman Republic, I was thinking, whoever got rid of this probably had all those others. And I know who got rid of these books, and I knew for sure, once I saw that this book would be in that person's possession, and maybe it went to the Brattle, maybe I would get a chance at it, and I did. I got it. This is Fergus Millar. This is his great masterpiece, The Emperor in the Roman World. This is in a little bit of rotten shape. The final 10 pages are all sort of melded together, and so were the first 10 pages until I split them apart. It's not a good condition paperback. It's solid enough. It will take a reread with annotations, but I mainly got it as a stopgap because I'm hoping that the Brattle gods will see that I'm in earnest and give me a hardcover. That would be great to have a hardcover of this. But now I have this in perfect condition, aside from the slight crappiness of the pages and maybe a little bit of weakness in the binding. But that it's a massive seminal work on ancient Roman history, and it was right there. So that's great. I'm inching closer and closer to a finished list of that. Then we have a couple of novels that I grabbed. This one I've had many times. I got the advanced copy from the publisher. I got the finished copy from the publisher. I got the paperback from the publisher. I bought another finished copy down the line. I keep getting rid of it. Sometimes, just give them away. Sometimes to you. And it keeps sticking with me. It's that element that I've talked about, that weird fourth dimensional element that reviewers have to face, that they have no control over. If I read a book, I can tell you in my review what it was like to read it, what its strengths and weaknesses are, whether or not you might like it, but I can't tell you whether or not I'll still be thinking about it in a year. That element is beyond my control, beyond any reader's control. You don't know which books are going to stick with you. And I'm not saying that element of sticking with you is a mark of quality. I'm sure it isn't. I'm sure that it differs from person to person. But if a book is going to do that for me, I like to have that book. And I don't know ahead of time. So if I've got a stack of books that I'm getting rid of, for all I know, one of the books in that stack could be one of those kinds of books. And that's what this is. This is by Sarah Schmidt. This is See What I Have Done. Her novel about Lizzie Borden, of all people, whose parents were found murderously butchered in their home here in New England. She was put on trial. And this is a novel about that just sort of takes you into a close, sweaty, claustrophobic, diseased world. It's just terrific. I thought it was just terrific. The first time that I read it and reviewed it, I loved it unqualifiedly. And then Jennifer at Insert Larry upon here did a video reviewing this book in which she points out some things that are legitimate. There's one narrative strand in here that she, as she says in her video, she just couldn't figure out what it was doing there or what it contributes to the book. I kind of agreed when I was watching her video. If it's still up, I'll try to leave a link to it down below. I kind of agreed about that, but I was also, it was nagging at my mind that when I was reading it, I thought that and then resolved that. I thought I had that same reservation, and then in the course of reading it that first time, or the second time when I got the finished copy, I resolved it. I sort of figured out an explanation that satisfied me for what that narrative strand was doing there. And I'm going to try that again with this. I'll reread this by the end of the year. Another third time as a charm book, and see if maybe that makes more organic sense to me this time around. Then this next one, I mention all the time that the Brattle gods are watching. They are. They're watching for a lot of things that you can or cannot do, things that will help or hurt your cause when shopping at the Brattle Bookshop, especially in the outside sale lot, which is totally random. Like I said, it's just organized by price. If you go to the outside sale lot, you look at this whole lot, these thousands and thousands of books, and you say, okay, here are the 3 things I'm looking for. You won't find those 3 things, and you won't find anything else. Because the Brattle gods are watching. And their attitude is, if I'm providing you with this kind of a bounty that book readers, diehard book fans all over the world would dream of having, you don't make demands. You take what I give you. That's one thing. Another thing is when you're browsing the Brattle sale carts outside, go with the flow. If you encounter a book on a subject that interests you, the Zulu Wars or the Habsburg Empire or the House of Windsor, and you think, oh, I don't know, maybe not, and then 2 shelves later on a different cart, you find a second or even a third book on that same subject, go back to the first book, take the first book on that subject, and take every book on that subject because the cart is trying to tell you something. You must go with the flow of the carts. Another thing is, don't ever leave anything behind. If you're shopping, if you're browsing the carts, don't expect that the book that you picked out 10 carts ago will still be there when you go back. Someone will have grabbed it right then in that 15 minutes. So don't leave anything behind. But another thing that a rule of mine at the Brattle is I will often make, as I did with The Emperor in the Roman World, I will often make a purchase in good faith. Sort of promissory thing. A placeholder until I get the version that I want. The only reason that this is practical, there are 2 reasons why this works where it wouldn't work in any other used bookstore. One is that the Brattle's turnover is unbelievable. It's insane. So it's not irrational to think if you find a copy of a book that you might find another copy of that book in relatively short order, a year, maybe a year and a half or 2. And also, the Brattle is so cheap. So the turnover plus the price means that you can buy a placeholder book. I want a hardcover copy of The Emperor in the Roman World. I got the paperback because it will do, and because it's a purchase in good earnest for the Brattle gods to know that I'm serious. And this next one is the fulfillment of that. I got a paperback of this when I actually kind of really wanted the hardcover, and lo and behold, the hardcover was there. Here we go. This is William McFeely, his biography of Thomas Eakins, the painter. There is a presentable Thomas Eakins painting. There are a whole bunch of others that he was fond of painting teenage boys. And this is a wonderful biography, just totally heartfelt. And I got the trade paperback of this a couple of Brattle visits ago because I know I like the book and I know I like the subject. But I really wanted the hardcover. So I got the trade paperback to sort of stand in place until a hardcover came along. It did, and I also got a reward because whoever had this clipped out the New York Review of Books review of this book and put it in here. So I will now get rid of the paperback. Then we have another novel. This is also something that I love. I have the ebook of it. I had a paperback of it once upon a time. But I got it because it's in perfect condition. I love it. I do reread it. And it's got one of these library plastic jackets on it. This is Lauren Eshelman's book, Bloody Season. A hardcover version of his novel about the gunfight at the OK Corral. That is terrific. I would have said, for years I did say that it was by far the best treatment of this subject, fiction or nonfiction, that anyone had written. Now, Mary Doria Russell wrote Epitaph, a novel about the OK Corral, and it is also brilliant. I'm a little bit doggedly unwilling to say that it's actually just plain better than Bloody Season, but they're both really, really good. Really, really good. If I saw a copy of Epitaph in hardcover with a dust jacket at the Brattle, I would probably have grabbed it today. I didn't. But I grabbed this. I couldn't leave this behind in perfect condition. Then this next one is a hardcover of something that I have in a beautiful trade paperback that is falling apart. I go back to my trade paperback all the time. So I was kind of hoping that somewhere along the line I would see the hardcover. I found a hardcover today with a library plastic covering on it. This is by Mark Anderson, and it is Shakespeare by another name. The fullest, most wonderfully written biography of Edward de Vere, the Earl of Oxford, that you're ever going to find. Big, honking thing that is just wonderful to read, just absorbing to read. It's not just that it covers all of the Shakespearean authorship ground, and it's not just that it covers all of the documentary ground. There's a ton of documentary evidence for the Earl of Oxford and his family. It's also fun to read. It's a page turner. And if we're talking about, like, for instance, the Emperor in the Roman World, or I would say Bergen's book on Dante, if we're talking about books where there's a discrete shelf on that subject that you must have if you have nothing else. Same thing is true on the Shakespearean, what is called the Shakespearean authorship controversy. This is a book to have. It's absolutely something that should be in your collection on that subject if you have such a collection, and I do. So I get to retire my trade paperback at last. It's in too rough shape to resell to the Brattle or even put in a free library. I think I'll just bury it in the backyard. And then finally, we'll wrap this Brattle haul up with a great big thing, also Roman history, but of a very different sort. This is an architectural reconstruction of Trajan's Forum in ancient Rome. James Packer. That right there on the cover is Trajan's Forum reconstructed. Part of it. This was a huge architectural complex, monument that the Emperor Trajan embarked upon at the height of his reign that had everything, just everything. It had the whole of the complex had shops, baths, libraries, a forum, a meeting place, everything, and tons of artwork. And in this book, the author reconstructs what everything must have looked like based on Roman architectural trends and also the ruins of Trajan's Forum in Rome. And I sort of never thought that I would ever see a copy of this for sale, much less for $3. So when I saw it, I grabbed it. This is going to be enormous amounts of fun to read through. Because if I remember correctly from when this was getting lots and lots of specialized critical press, this was reviewed at length, I think, in the Journal of Roman Studies, for instance. If I remember correctly, this is also, as it would almost have to be, a big history of Trajan's reign. And maybe a little of Hadrian's reign as well. So this goes on the list right up. This and The Emperor in the Roman World are real Roman finds. So can we do a Steve Pyramid? We have the Forum of Trajan in Rome in paperback. Then Shakespeare by Another Name in hardcover with a plastic dust jacket. Fantastic. We have Bloody Season by Lauren Eshelman. I really cannot recommend Lauren Eshelman strongly enough. No matter what. Not just this book, but anything. He's really tremendously good. Then Portrait, a Thomas Eakins biography that I got in hardcover because I was patient and waited. Then we have See What I Have Done. Very intriguing novel about Lizzie Borden, of all people. Then The Emperor in the Roman World, Fergus Millar, could be the find of the day. In terms of how long I have wanted it in my collection. Then Citizen Tom Paine by Howard Fast, a first edition, but a first edition that has seen better days. So I don't think it's collectible at all. I don't plan to get rid of it. Then The Little Princesses by Marion Crawford, sort of a seminal work in Windsor history, a book that crops up often. It's not really all that useful as a research tool, unless you're researching public perception of the Windsors, that sort of thing. Then it would probably be invaluable. Hoping against hope that I have a smile on my face when I'm reading it. Then The Gardens of the Finzi Continis, the one section of a novel of Ferrara that everyone has read, had a mass market paperback in America, for Pete's sake. Then Bergen's book on Dante, study of the work and life from the foremost Dante scholar of the previous generation. Then The Night Climbers, a water-warped edition here that I will try for the third time. King Henry VIII. With Hyacinth Bouquet on the cover, but I'll be reading it for the notes, not the cover. The Life of Prescott by George Tickner. Amazing to find this, just amazing. I will do my best, inconspicuously, to strengthen it. I don't want to do anything to the outside of it, but I will try to make it so that it's easily readable to me. Then a contemporary book of Irish poetry. And finally, it says it well, because this Steve Pyramid isn't going to last much longer, The Last Days of Krypton. A little hologram on the cover, because it's exploded. See? Like the planet did. So there you go. Oh my God! All right, that Steve Pyramid didn't last any longer. There we go. That was my trip to the Brattle. For, what is this, the first week of September. So if predictions are correct, then Boston has a week, maybe 10 days, maybe 2 weeks left until, allegedly, all of its subway systems are restored. That was only supposed to be stopped for a month. We shall see. But lots and lots of fun stuff here. I could easily have spent all day, but after a little while there, I start to worry about, deadlines and also my little bean back at home. So that was a Brattle trip for today. Probably one next week. In the meantime, I will wrap this up for now, and I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.